Racial discrimination is illegal. I want justice. I want justice. Racial discrimination is illegal.
I want justice. I want justice. Racial discrimination is illegal.
I want justice. I want justice. I want justice. I want justice. Racial discrimination is illegal. I want justice. I want justice. Racial
Welcome to Samilla. What's going on now? Did you hear about the racial discrimination that's going on in the city of Kingstree? Took place. Now I'm here with Mr. Edward Anderson, also known as Tweety, and I need you to give me some information about this protest that you've got going on right now.
Absolutely, Simone. Thank you for having me. I am Edward Anderson, also known as Tweety. I am an entertainment promoter, and I collaborated with Putin McGraw to bring in the venue here at Kingstree City Rec in September 2022. Unfortunately, I encountered racial discrimination issues where the town of Kingstree had sled on the top of the building and drones flying over people's heads. When you look at the pig picking events that have been held here, that has never happened. So it caused me to lose $90,000. Therefore, I am fighting for my rights. I am fighting against racial discrimination and a breach of contract. Thank you.
We'll be sitting down talking at 3:30 for full details and more information on this. So I invite you to join us. Tune in at 3:30 p.m. in just a little bit to hear the whole story. Welcome to Samilla. What's going on now? Today I'm sitting and talking with Mr. Edward Anderson, aka Tweety. And as you know, we spoke earlier as they were protesting here in Kingstree. On today, we're going to talk with him to get some details about what's going on. Can you tell me, first of all, welcome and thank you, Mr. Anderson, for joining me.
Thank you for helping me, Samela.
Yes, you got a lot going on now.
Yeah, I do.
Could you tell me a little bit about the specifics of what's going on, the incident that happened with you, and what led to this discrimination going on?
Sure. I will provide as much information as I can, although there are two legal lawsuits against the town of Kingstree, South Carolina. But I'll be glad to provide you with as much pertinent information as I can.
Okay.
First and foremost, I am Edward Anderson, also known as Tweety, as you mentioned. I'm a native of Kingstree, South Carolina, born and raised.
Okay.
I graduated from Kingstree Senior High School in 1981. And I'm an 86 graduate of South Carolina State University, where I obtained my BS degree in marketing. So, directly to your question, on September 23rd, 2022, as an entertainment promoter, I bought Bootsy here, and I collaborated with Putin McGraw as the host for the event. And all the logistics have been worked out with the town of Kingstree. I complied with everything in the contract. However, on the night of the event, as I traveled to the Kingstree City Rec, where the event was on the outside grounds on the back of the building, unbeknownst to me and never mentioned to me, the town of Kingstree had police cars at the main entrance and the back entrance of the Kingstree City Rec with the blue lights going around and around. And directly across the street, there were about 30, I don't say 30, could have been more than 30 police cars from other jurisdictions. And as I continued to drive around to the back of the building, on the top of the building, SLED agents were on the top of the building. And during the concert, drones were flown over the people's heads. I had no idea what was going on because this language was not in the contract. And when you compare that event to the pig picking events that are held here in Kingstree by the town of Kingstree, South Carolina, this has never occurred. So let me clarify that. When I say this has never occurred, meaning SLED agents weren't on the top of the building, drones have never been flown over people's heads, and there weren't 30 police cars parked across the street in the MUSC parking lot. This deterred people from wanting to come because it really looked like it was a crime scene.
Yes, I can see that. I can see that because if I were to have driven up to something like that, my thing would have been run, turn around, going around. Yes.
And that's what a lot of people did. It deterred them. People were constantly driving up and down Nelson Boulevard, and I guess they were trying to figure out what was going on. And it was also posted on social media that SLED was on the top of the building. So this was homecoming night in Kingstree, South Carolina. So the word got out very quickly.
Wow. Okay. Setting a platform for people to actually not show. I hate to say it like that, but because of the knowledge of it, not only when they arrived there would they see it, it was also known in advance.
Correct.
That it was there. Yeah. Upon signing and talking with the people, the city of Kingstree, as you said, there was no knowledge of that going to that extent for security. Is that what you're saying?
Specifically, yes to your question.
Yes.
The contract that was signed, and I've had history with doing events at the Kingstree City Rec with the town of Kingstree from 2015 through 2018. So the contract states that I am responsible for paying for 2 of Kingstree off-duty police officers. Private security, whoever is renting the venue, is responsible for paying for private security. So I hired 2 private security companies that were bringing close to 40 armed security officers.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I went through all the logistics with Mr. Train, Richard Train, who was the town manager at that time, as well as Kip Coker, who was the chief of police at that time. And Mayor Darren Tisdale was aware of the event that was being held as well. I just don't think that they were upfront and honest with me, because I was transparent and honest, because that's the only way I know how to be when conducting business.
I understand. When you contacted them, and I don't want you to step into any of the areas that you don't want to, but once contacted, did they give satisfaction, justification, explanation to you for why they did what they did?
Absolutely not. I mean, I literally sent emails to Richard Train asking who requested SLED and the other police officers from other jurisdictions.
Yeah.
And I text that message to Kip Coker, who was the chief of police at that time, but I never heard a response.
Wow. Has anyone reached out to you after this, after you've put this in place? Have anyone decided to sit down and fully give you full details on why they did what they did?
Because it's an ongoing legal matter,
You cannot say.
I can't say, but I can say this. There were things that have been mentioned that didn't make sense to me.
Okay.
Because I feel that if there was a problem beforehand, then that should have been worked out.
Yes.
Through the logistics of organizing the event, instead of me running into SLED and other police officers from other jurisdictions and the police officers being at the main entrance and the back entrance with blue lights swirling around and around.
Yeah.
Now, all of my other events that I've done there, police officers were always close to the building
Yes.
with the lights on dim. And I've attended other events that other people have held there, and that's where they've been located, near the building, not at the entrance of the venue, meaning right at Nelson Street, and I think right at the end of, I think that's the name of the street is Porter,
Right.
with the blue lights going around and around. So it really did deter the people from coming.
Yes.
It was that event was racially profiled. I lost $90,000.
Wow. Lord. Okay. $90,000.
$90,000.
$90,000.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So overall, that has impacted you heavily with that kind of money being. I mean, even the richest of person, I mean, don't have $90,000 just to throw in the air. You know what I'm saying? So, how has that impacted you?
Nobody wants to lose money when he or she is investing. However, it has made me determined that I can't do another event with the town of Kingstree at the Kingstree City Rec, because there were rules and regulations that weren't in the contract that was, brought up as time went along prior to the contract. For example, the fire chief, Tim Duke, said to me that I would have to have a certified crowd management company. So that language was not in the contract. So I asked, do I have to have a certified crowd management company in addition to the 2 private security companies? And he said yes. So then I asked, which certified crowd management company did the town of Kingstree use for the pig picking events?
Okay.
And his response was, they used the Williamsburg Academy students.
And they are certified. Okay. Okay, we're going to go on. Do you have emails and text messages on this? I mean, for your records as well going forward?
In reference to the communication I
Had with
the
them,
town?
yeah, with the town.
Yes.
Okay.
I just can't provide them, because of it being a legal
I got you.
matter.
Okay, all right. Well, that's understanding, right? Well, I was going to ask you, you've already given me the names and contacts. What do you see? And I hate to say for the town of Kingstree, and you and I have sort of talked off records here. What do you see, I mean, for the future of the town of Kingstree if this kind of thing is constantly being thrown in place?
Samela, that's a great question.
And I shouldn't ask it. I mean, if this is the situation.
Unfortunately, I have witnesses that have encountered the racial discrimination as well. I do not know if they came forward or not. It is unfortunate, especially after I had history with working with the town of Kingstree. I hope that if anyone else encounters this, he or she will feel confident enough to come forward, because it's a violation of one's rights. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 legally prohibits racial discrimination. So I have to stand up for my rights because I've lost $90,000.
Yes.
And I do want justice, but I will say to anyone, make your voice heard if you've been discriminated against, whether it be race, color, religion, creed. Make your voice known, because there are laws out there to protect you for this.
Have anyone reached out to you to say, let's sit down and renegotiate the situation?
You mean, of
Like-
course you mean from the town of Kingstree?
Yes, from the town of Kingstree, yes. Has any of them sat down? You can't say that?
Say anything.
Okay, on
in
that,
regards to
okay, we'll
because
leave
it's
that,
an
okay.
ongoing legal matter.
Okay. All righty. Well, I know you've got your records, you've got your details, your emails, so you're pretty much set. And if I was to come into the town of Kingstree, what advice would you give me As far as saying, oh, well, I want to bring something to the county of Kingstree. And to be honest with you, I was considering doing something. What, what advice would you give me? Just you and I. This is not going towards the town or city of Kingstree, as much say. But let's just say, if I was to say, Mr. Anderson, I want to do an event. What do you think? How do you think I would stand? What do you think my position would stand to get something here? First, I'm not from Kingstree, so I know that probably would be a no automatically. But let's strike what I have against me.
Well, it really shouldn't matter where you're from. My advice would be to comply with all the rules and regulations, which
It's
I
what you
definitely
did. That's what I was
because
going to get to.
you really do not know what the outcome is going to entail, even when you comply with the rules and regulations. Bootsy, who was the recording artist that came, has been to numerous places in South Carolina: Greenville, Charleston, House of Blues in Myrtle Beach, Marion, Florence, several times, and in Manning, South Carolina. Actually, Kip Coker, if I recall, was still working in Manning with the Clarendon County, might have been the Sheriff Department, when Bootsy actually performed there in Manning, South Carolina. The only thing you can do is comply with the rules and regulations and make sure you have your security team in place, do the walkthroughs like I did. But again, I did all of that. But I had no idea that the town was actually planning behind my back to bring in the other police officers from other jurisdictions and or to have sled on the top of the building and drones flying over people's heads.
Question, and if you can't answer this, I don't understand. Why do you think they went to that extent for this particular event? And if you don't want to answer that, I understand. That's a bit much. For any kind of concert. Sled and drones and,
It actually is, and to your point, actually a sled agent asked me, did I know where Bootsy was staying? And I've been doing entertainment for years, but I have never had someone ask me where the artist is staying.
Okay.
So that really made my antenna go up.
Yeah.
But that's really all I can say in regards to that question.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, is there anything you would like to relate to the people on this? Because I feel like we as individuals, and you comply with everything, we need to stand. And if this outcome doesn't do anything except encourage others to stand for the right, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Then you've accomplished something out of this. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
but
I do.
I just feel sad that we individuals are in a time like this. The year is 2024. And you would think that's all past behind us for this racial discrimination thing.
Right.
But it's there now, and it was there then, and it's still here now, but it's masked. They wear masks, But what would you like to tell the people yourself from from all that you've dealt with? It seems as though what you set out to do and accomplish, there was a little turn in it. It was a change. So what would you, tell people or young people or individuals that is trying to climb the ladder but seems to be constantly pulled back down?
Wow, that's a great question. I would definitely say stay determined, keep your eye on the prize, because success does not come overnight. You may have trials and tribulations and failures before you become successful. And don't let anybody take your dream away from you. I also feel that there has to be transparency between the two parties. And there has to be honesty.
Yes.
And clear communication. If you're in doubt about something, ask questions. Don't assume.
Yes.
Because I think a lot of assumptions went into this concert, not by me,
Right.
but by the town of Kingstree. And I had all my ducks in a row.
Yeah.
You can host an event, and the most that you can do when hosting an event is to have security. And if police officers can attend, that's fine. And you want to make sure that nobody can bring any weapon and or weapons in, which is what I did.
Okay.
And I do that for my events. If an artist is on the stage performing, and something happens in the audience, that's not the artist's fault.
Right.
That's why you hire security, to handle issues in the crowd.
Yes.
So back to what I initially said, stay determined, know your objective, make sure you have a legitimate contract, and pursue your goals.
There was always something said to me, and when you were saying that, and you were saying get your ducks in order, they always tell me, look over, read it, turn the paper over, or walk away from it. Come back, look over it, and read it again. And then there's a chance you may miss something still. So black and white, and study and be up, be on top of what you have to have. And I'm glad that you were stepping forward. And I'll just say this because I run across so many people that come part of the way and then they drop back because of fear, because of certain people that, stamina, whatever you want to call it, is put in place. And when I do see an individual that's standing for right, then I would say I support that person, because it's hard enough here to do what we have to do than to have our own race and other races and nationalities pulling at you at one time.
I understand.
You know what I mean? I think that's safe enough to say it that way. Anyway, but
Well,
anyway.
I want to piggyback on that. I won't divulge some of the pertinent information,
Right.
but there were a lot of blockades that were thrown my way, even with having this concert by the town of Kingstree. I'll say this. Mr. Train, Richard Train, who was the town manager at the time, he actually called me 4 different times. This one time he mentioned that his wife saw Bootsy on social media. Now, I don't know what he was expecting me to do with that, but I do know that if someone advertises on social media, and if it's a violation, they have what's called Facebook jail.
Yes.
And they will let,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
Facebook will let you know.
Yeah, I've been in Facebook jail a time. Yeah, okay.
But the people in Kingstree were really hyped up about Bootsy.
Yeah, Bootsy is big. That's a name.
Yeah.
And even I know.
Well, in some of my events that I've done there, I've had DJs, local rap artists, and then a lot of the people were asking, well, can you bring a national rap artist? And actually, I was about to sign Rick Ross to bring him for the homecoming after party. And I changed one day prior to signing with Rick Ross because when I did my research, the people really wanted Bootsy to come.
Wow. And this was not your first event that you've had
with the town of
Yes.
Kingstree? No.
Okay.
I started out 2015. I did one in 2015, 16, 17, and 18.
Annually.
But I actually started out in 8th grade throwing dances at Thomas and Jim.
8th grade.
I started throwing dances in 8th grade.
Wow.
All through my high school years.
Okay. So you knew and know what you needed to do, how to put your ducks in line, how to approach things.
Absolutely.
Good.
Even when I lived in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, I've hosted events in Maryland and D.C. I've dealt with Red Essence, who's a very popular go-go band.
Yes, heard of it.
And I've dealt with Subtle Thoughts, and I did Mr. Cheeks in Red Essence in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
So I had the experience to kind of know what to do and what not to do, and
Yes.
I definitely know how much security would be needed because we literally were on the outside grounds. So that was a lot of coverage that I needed to have covered
Right.
by the security officers.
Okay, so it's on the grounds, on the outside.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And had the town brought the police officers from the other jurisdictions to the walkthroughs that we did, then I would have known to ask them questions.
Right. You could have addressed the elephant.
And
in the
I
room
probably
there.
didn't have to hire those two private security
Yeah,
teams.
exactly. Okay. You and I are going to have to talk again.
Okay.
We have to talk again. And as this thing progresses, we want to influence others to stay on the right track and don't give up, don't lose faith, as you said. Be persistent at what you're doing, because it's easy for someone to steal your joy, and it's
Yes.
hard for you to get it back a lot of times.
Yes.
So, in closing, what would you like to leave us with?
Well, in closing, I would like to leave you with, I really would like to see the town of Kingstree do right by me and provide me with justice for the racial discrimination and the breach of contract that I encountered. And going forward, I hope that they will be very open-minded to embracing concerts, the logistics of it, being honest and discussing, if there are any concerns or doubts about anything in the contract. But there has to be open communication and transparency and honesty in order for it to be a success. Because the mayor, Darren Tisdale, said that he wanted this to be a successful event.
Yes.
But I am concerned that, by him having knowledge, Richard Train and Kip Coker, again, they were not upfront and honest with me about this concept.
And this is leading
This led to the
what?
racial discrimination
Yes.
lawsuit and the breach of contract, because for picking events, there has been a history of fights and you did not have the police presence and or sled out there for that like you did for the Bootsy concert that I hosted and collaborated with Puddin' McGraw on.
I want to say something, but I think I'll save that for another time.
Okay.
And then I need to talk with you off records with that one. But anyway, we're going to pray that everything go good, and hope that I'm going to say that everything will be done and justice will prevail on this.
Thank you.
And if there's anything that I can do, I'm all about doing right, and there's two sides to a story.
Correct.
And we just want to let the people know what's going on with you and what has happened, because I'm sure there were questions out there, and now at least you put some light on it for them, shed some light on it for them.
Well, let me say this as well. Since you mentioned light, I actually reached out to the Kingstree News, and I asked the editor to publish my racial discrimination case against the town of Kingstree on the front of the newspaper, and I wanted to know what is the cause. She didn't initially respond as quickly, so I went by the station and spoke with the manager. The manager did tell me that she's working on it and she needed to check with the town of Kingstree, and I was okay with that. I understand that. However, the response was the Kingstree News could not print it on the front of the newspaper, but they could print it on the inside of the newspaper. Well, I responded and said that I've seen 3 articles published on the front of the Kingstree News, and they were all African Americans. And I asked, why couldn't my article for racial discrimination be printed on the front of the Kingstree News. I have not heard back from the Kingstree News since then.
Okay. Like switch one, right? Switch on
Right.
one. Okay. Wow. And you were offering to pay,
Yes.
and you, okay. All right. If you guys have any questions or concerns about this, type it in the comments, and Mr. Anderson will be more than happy to respond back according to if he can.
If I can
If he
legally.
can. Legally,
yes.
he will respond back to it for you, and get behind and support, this cause, because if he don't get any support, this is going to die, and it's going to continue on. So I suggest you get behind someone, support them when they're trying to do what they're doing, because you never know. It could be you or someone else next time, or you may want to do something and it's done to you. And we're going to pray that justice is done and prevailed properly for Mr. Anderson, and that the city comes to the cup and do what they're supposed to do if it's their doing. We're just going to hope things work out. But please comment and put your questions in there, because he and I are going to be talking again, and your questions that you post and question that you ask, maybe he and I will address them at that time. Maybe I'll just print them off for him and we can address them at that time if it's something that he can answer. Right?
Thank you. I certainly will do my best, as long as it does not violate anything illegally.
Yes.
And Samila, I am going to stand up for my rights, as I'm doing now, because I do not take racial discrimination lightly.
One thing our families have fought, died, and and for our rights.
Yes.
And just for us to walk away from them. And I try to express that to young people all the time, even simple as voting. I'm like, you got us people that died, fought for this, and you guys just sit down and I'm not going to vote. It doesn't matter, but you got to stand. You got to learn to stand. We have to
Yes.
teach our young people and our middle-aged people and our people in general to stand. And it doesn't really matter if we're white or black. Just stand, if it's done, because it can be done both ways.
Yes, and let me say that I know, I can't recall if I mentioned this earlier, but there are others that have had some racial discrimination issues. I know of one person that reached out to the Kingstree News about putting an article on the front page also in reference to discrimination, and the person said that it didn't happen. So it needs to be addressed.
Yes.
There needs to be a meeting about a meeting, a round table discussion.
Yeah.
And deal with the elephant in the room.
In the room, exactly.
Because if people don't stand for something, you're going to fall for anything.
True that. Well, I thank you so very much for sitting down and talking with me. As I said, you and I we have to get together and do this again, so we can, dig a little more into some other questions I want to ask, but I want to first make sure that they are okay for me to ask you that, and then like I said, the people probably, I'm pretty sure, will come up with questions on there, and we can have those, and you and I can sit down and talk a few more minutes about it, and as things progress, I want to keep up with this, because we don't want the fire to go out or die down,
I understand. And again, Samela, thank you for having me. I'll be glad to discuss it, especially if it's violating one's rights.
Right, exactly. Well, you're listening to Samela, What's Going On Now? And I'm talking to Mr. Anderson, okay? And he's dealing with some issues here in the town of Kingstree, South Carolina. And I want you guys to get behind Mr. Anderson, support him, and and let's make his voice be heard more than just through this, but let's make his voice be heard. And again, I thank you so very much.
Thank you too, Samela.
All right.